What if your garden's next upgrade wasn't in a store, but in your junk drawer? Today on Nailed It Now, we're reimagining broken remotes, tangled USBs, and old tech into rustic garden borders and quirky fence art. Everything you see is meant to inspire, not to copy. Take the ideas, twist them, make them your own. Timestamps are included. Got questions? Leave a comment. This isn't just a video. It's a heartbeat. So if you feel something, hit that subscribe button. It's not for the numbers. It's to keep this little dream alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. So if you feel something, hit that subscribe button. It's not for the numbers. It's to keep this little dream alive. In a forgotten corner of the yard, where the grass curves softly toward a wooden fence and a garden bed quietly breathes, something unexpected rises. A sculpture of spiraling rims and floral defiance. Old bicycle wheels, once rusting in sheds or tossed behind garages, are now planted proudly in the soil, forming a swirling fence of circles that seem to dance in stillness. Some have been gently painted, off-white, sage, bronze, their matte surfaces catching the sun like antique porcelain. Others remain untouched, their rust telling stories no brush could ever improve. Between them, red geraniums explode like laughter, ivy tiptoes up their frames, and bees hum through the open spokes. It's imperfect. It's alive. At the center of the garden bed, a spiral climbs, rim after rim, as if the wind had sculpted steel. In another yard, the rims are left raw, embracing decay as texture, creating an edge for lavender, daisies, and a gravel path that crunches underfoot. A wooden bench rests beneath a tree, waiting for someone with dirt under their nails and peace in their chest. And tucked beside a small patio, 3 silver rims mark the border of raised tomato planters, sunlight casting circular shadows on the paving stones. It's humble, it's doable, a simple fence made of memory and metal, now holding space for life. This is not art born in galleries or designed for perfection. This is garden making with soul, with intention, with a little rust and a lot of care. Some gardens whisper, others hum, but the ones with rusty pipe dividers? They speak, not in words, but in textures, shadows, and the patient climb of green. In a quiet corner of a UK terrace garden, weathered iron pipes once discarded now rise proudly, forming a handmade fence with sculptural rhythm. Their rust tells a story of forgotten years, of factory work and rainstorms, now softened by time and softened further by vines, sweet peas, passion flowers, morning glories, weaving in and out like threads through a loom. They do not hide the view but frame it, creating privacy through artistry. Each pipe is different in diameter and age, some pitted, some smooth, some bowing slightly from past burdens. They're welded together in tidy vertical grids, or bent into quiet shapes that invite the eyes to pause. The contrast is sharp and soothing all at once. The raw metal and the gentleness of leaves, the grit of decay and the softness of growth. In one version, herbs are tucked into the grid, tiny pots of basil, thyme, mint, adding fragrance and utility to what could have just been sculpture. In another, the grid is purely architectural, providing climbing structure for green beans, or forming an abstract window between a garden path and a sitting bench shaded by a lemon tree in a clay pot. Bark mulch crunches softly underfoot, recycled pavers lead the way, and all is bathed in the kind of natural daylight that never needs editing. A pale sun breaking through gray cloud cover, or the golden warmth of a dry afternoon in Sydney. If you've ever doubted what old pipes could become, stand in a space like this. You'll feel it, the shift in perspective. From scrap to structure, from waste to wonder. And yes, you can do this too. With simple tools, with found parts, with time and care. The grid doesn't need to be perfect. The rust is part of its charm. All you need is a wall, a few anchors, and an eye for balance. Let the plants do the rest. In a quiet corner of a small garden, where the scent of tomatoes meets the breath of the morning, something raw and resilient rises from the soil. A trellis born not from catalog perfection, but from the bones of old rebar, welded into purpose by a patient hand. This is not a polished sculpture. It does not gleam. Its surface tells the truth, rust-kissed by rain, earth stains where fingers held it steady, and angles that lean ever so slightly as if listening to the vines climbing up. Morning glories bloom like paper lanterns in soft pink and purple, wrapping themselves lovingly around the steel grid. Below, the raised beds brim with leafy greens, their roots drinking in life, their stems brushing against the iron spine that holds their climbing cousins. One trellis stands beside a wooden fence, another rests near a stone path, casting a ladder-like shadow across the gravel as the sun makes its slow descent. A pair of gloves lies folded over a garden bed edge, forgotten for now, as tomatoes blush quietly behind them. In another corner, clematis and sweet peas race up toward the sky, tangled joyfully, their soft petals contrasting the rigid strength beneath. This is rebar reborn, the kind once buried in concrete, now blooming with life. It's an invitation to see beauty in the structural, to use what's around you, not just for support, but for poetry. So if you have old metal rods lying in the back shed, don't overlook them. With a little weld, a little patience, and a touch of imagination, they could become a trellis that tells your garden's story, unfiltered, unedited, and entirely your own. In the quiet pocket of a backyard or patio corner, where nothing grand is expected, a pair of old metal drums becomes something worth pausing for. At first glance, they might seem like leftovers from an industrial story, scarred by rust, dented by time, and brushed with fading colors of mint green and coral pink. But under the warm hush of afternoon light, they hold something much more tender. Lettuces, zinnias, rosemary, all growing as if they never knew these containers were once forgotten barrels. Nature has a way of softening even the hardest edges. One drum shows a decorative cutout that casts shadows like lace onto the garden wall, while another leans slightly, its base nestled into the stone flooring of a sunlit patio. A ceramic frog, quietly amused, sits as if to guard the blooms. The surface rust, rather than a flaw, becomes the palette of authenticity, bronze, sienna, and soot woven into texture. In a different scene, Stacked barrels rise like a tiered sculpture, herbs cascading in tufts of thyme, parsley, and chives, all tumbling over the edges like wild green hair. Nearby, a whimsical chain of bottle caps twirls with the breeze, catching the light and adding a soft clink to the air. You sense that whoever made this corner didn't just want beauty, they wanted it to breathe with life and laughter. This is what reclaimed gardening can be, not sterile or flawless, but real. A place where the dents tell stories, the cracks hold roots, and the colors don't quite match, yet feel right. A project for anyone with a free afternoon and a will to let something grow where once there was only waste. Start with 1 drum, or 3, and let your little garden corner tell its own warm tale. In a quiet corner where wooden fences lean softly into their age, something magical begins to bloom, not from soil, but from scrap. Discarded fan blades, once whirring indoors unnoticed, now dance with a second life beneath open skies. Each metal petal, rusted, bent, or brushed silver, has been fastened lovingly into wall-bound mandalas and gentle spirals, catching the changing light like wildflowers made of steel. On one fence, you'll find them sprouting like blossoms, intertwined with climbing clematis and honeysuckle vines that weave in and out as if nature is reaching to claim them as her own. The shadows shift as the breeze plays across the curves of the metal, casting slow, moving patterns onto the earth below. No filters, no edits. Just morning sun and metal breathing side by side. Elsewhere, a humble palette wall turns into a mural of upcycled poetry, with blades reshaped into butterflies and leaves, some painted in soft whites and garden bronzes, others left raw and rust-kissed. A small round table below, topped with a potted succulent, completes the picture. It's not perfect, and that's exactly the point. The story here is not about precision, but transformation, about seeing forgotten pieces as potential, not waste. If you're wondering how to start, look for broken fans in thrift stores or old garages. Secure each blade with strong bolts into wood, spacing them in rhythm with your own imagination. Add climbing plants or trailing herbs nearby to soften the edges and bring movement. It's a project that costs almost nothing, yet turns a plain garden wall into a gallery that breathes with weather, wind, and wonder. And as always, let the imperfections stay. Let the rust speak. Let the shadows shift. That's where the beauty lives. Somewhere along a quiet backyard fence, under the forgiving shade of summer's green, an old story is being retold in metal. Not with polished brass or precision screws, but with forgotten washers, rusted bolts, mismatched nuts, each salvaged piece a fragment of something once useful, now finding harmony in chaos. One panel begins with a sunburst. 1,000 circles radiate outward, as if time itself exploded from the center of a wooden board. Silvered steel sits beside deep rust. Shiny chrome and soot-blackened iron whisper their histories, bike frames, toolboxes, garage shelves, now reborn as a textured celebration of resilience. The arrangement is not perfect, nor is it meant to be. It's the hand of someone who trusted their eye more than a ruler, and that trust shows. The light hits the edges at odd angles, casting shadows like a sundial built from ruin. Behind it, feathery ornamental grasses lean in, softening the stern geometry with every breeze. Elsewhere, on a corner fence in an urban UK garden, another mosaic blooms, this time with swirling energy. The bolts curl into circular dances, spiraling with the confidence of forgotten machinery. Evening light touches everything with a hint of amber, turning cold metal warm. The plywood beneath has aged, but not tired, protected by care and resin. At the base, herbs like mint and oregano spill over their planters, their fragrance mingling with the scent of sun-warmed rust. It feels like a kitchen garden was given an industrial heart. Then, in a tiny New Zealand patio, a vertical triptych steals your breath. Each panel is different, yet unified, concentric rings, mirrored balance, and layers that resemble the inside of old clocks. Nasturtiums grow like living embroidery, threading themselves around the iron structure, their petals glowing like little suns. The contrast between the blooms and bolts is striking, yet entirely natural. It's a dialogue, steel and flower, effort and ease, forgotten and flourishing. These installations do more than decorate. They teach us how to listen to old things, to the potential still locked in rust. They remind us that fences don't always have to divide. They can express, they can connect, they can tell stories of hands that build slowly, imperfectly, but with heart. So if you ever find a drawer full of metal odds and ends, don't throw them away. Let your garden become their second life. There's beauty in the unfinished, poetry in the corroded, and unexpected joy in seeing light dance across bolts no one else believed in. There's a kind of hush in a backyard when something forgotten is given a new voice. Where once flickering static lived, these broken televisions now echo with life, not from cables or signals, but from ivy vines, weathered wood, and tiny pots of succulents gently thriving in the quiet sun. Each frame, once destined for the landfill, now stands upright against an old garden fence, telling a new story with every wire, leaf, and petal. One display, nestled under soft afternoon light, cradles a birdhouse made of leftover pine. Ivy wraps the outer frame like curious fingers reaching toward sky, while inside, the simple elegance of nature is framed like a portrait. In another corner, a gray-toned monitor becomes an industrial stage for a bouquet of dried wildflowers. Their brittle stems and soft seed pods stand frozen in golden stillness, a moment in time preserved behind the screen's wire mesh. Beneath them, parsley and mint grow in humble plastic bottles, bridging yesterday's waste with today's renewal. And then there's the centerpiece, 3 televisions stacked like a modern altar to reuse. In each screen cavity, a different tale unfolds. Spirals of antique keys that once locked and unlocked countless memories, twisted driftwood bound in copper wire, forming shapes that resemble roots, branches, perhaps even birds mid-flight, and an old motherboard glittering with tiny LED lights, like stars scattered across a forgotten constellation. These aren't just decorations. They're declarations. Proof that beauty can be built from what's broken, that even the dead glow of electronics can be softened by soil and blooms. To recreate this in your own space, begin not with a blueprint but with curiosity. Ask what lies hidden in your garage or neighborhood junk pile. Strip down an old screen, give it breath and purpose. Let light filter through cracks. Let nature take the stage. And above all, let it feel personal. There's no need to polish too much. The charm is in the rust, the uneven grain, the way marigolds bloom beneath tired tech. Because sometimes the most heartfelt gardens are grown not in the ground, but on the walls we once built to keep the world out. some gardens don't begin with soil. Some begin with the clink of glass and the decision to keep what others discard. At the edge of a small wooden fence, where daisies bloom with untamed joy, a quiet revolution is taking place. One that starts with old bottles, rusted mesh, and the patient hands of someone who still believes in gentle transformation. The first frame catches your breath for a moment. Rows upon rows of green, brown, and clear glass bottles cradled in handmade loops of wire. The bottles are angled upside down, like tiny rain collectors or memory vessels from another life. Some cradle dried blooms and sunlight. Others remain empty, simply reflecting the soft morning light. Each bottle casts a shadow that dances with the fence behind it. The bottles aren't uniform, but they don't need to be. In their randomness, there's order, a mosaic of light and reuse that brings the whole space to life. Just around the corner, the wire takes on another role: utility. Plastic bottles, sliced and filled with dark soil, dangle neatly on rust-kissed mesh. In this little corner of a city backyard, basil stretches toward the light, thyme curls gently over its edge, and mint adds its unmistakable vibrance. The bottles may have once held soda, but now they cradle sustenance. There's condensation on their edges, a sign of morning watering, and stepping stones below suggest this garden isn't just a display. It's used. It feeds. And then there's the wall built for visitors of a different kind. On a wooden frame stretched with chicken wire, wine bottles lean at relaxed angles, some filled with bamboo stalks, now homes for solitary bees. This garden isn't only for humans. It hums with the presence of other lives: bees, butterflies, and crawling things. Insects find refuge in hollow glass and honeycombed wood. There's a rhythm here of giving and receiving, of building not just for beauty, but for habitat. These bottle installations aren't polished, and they're not trying to be. They're honest, a little tilted, a little raw, but real, and that's what makes them magical. They invite you to do the same, to take what's already in your hands and hang it in the sunlight until it glows with new purpose. To see a garden not just as a place for plants, but as a canvas for kindness, reuse, and care. If you ever find yourself staring at a stack of used bottles or a patch of bare fence, remember, this too can become a sanctuary. You don't need perfection. You just need a start, a bit of mesh, and a belief that beauty often lives in the overlooked. Let the light in. Let the bottles clink again. This time, as part of something green and good. There's a quiet genius in the way forgotten machines find new meaning in a garden. Where once fans whirred and microchips pulsed with digital life, now the empty frames breathe fresh air and cradle green growth. In this humble corner of a recycled backyard, old CPU grills are no longer barriers. They are windows into renewal. In the first garden, a vertical divider stands quietly between two metal posts, its center carved from a repurposed computer chassis. The matte black grille feels deliberate, framed by rusted edges that soften with age and weather. Below it, herbs peek out of an old printer tray planter, reaching toward the filtered light like curious children. Ornamental grasses sway behind, their gold fronds brushing the aluminum frame, a natural contrast to its industrial past. A solar lantern swings gently nearby, as if guarding this passage into green reprieve. Elsewhere in a tiny UK patio, a forgotten wall socket becomes a garden jewel. A grill, still bearing its rusted bolts and raw finish, has been tucked into a brick recess. There, in that unlikely space, bloom pansies in violet and white, dancing among sprigs of alyssum like laughter in an old song. Clematis vines meander across the brick face, wrapping memories and hope around metal edges. It feels tender, this act of reclaiming, as though the flowers are gently thanking the metal for allowing them to thrive. And finally, beneath a soft golden sun, a framed CPU window opens not to code, but to creeping ivy. Built into a wooden fence, it offers a glimpse of the garden beyond, benches, pebbles, and a path that leads to peace. Each slat in the grill throws a shadow, crisp and gentle, like piano keys in the early morning. It's imperfect, yes, a little scratched, a little dusty, but so is everything worth keeping. So is every honest corner of a lived-in home. These grills were once designed to keep heat out. Now they let warmth in, the warmth of plants, of time, of patient hands giving old objects a second life. If you ever doubted what tech junk could become, look again. The poetry of reinvention is everywhere, in the rust, the roots, and the resilient bloom of flowers reaching toward light through old metal bones. There's something deeply satisfying about taking a forgotten object and letting it dance again in the sunlight. In this tiny garden patch, discarded paint can lids, once sealed tight with pigment and memory, now spin freely, catching the wind like petals set loose. Each lid has been given new life, suspended from the beams of a wooden pergola. They sway like sun medallions, one painted the color of ripe tangerines, another a soft blue like summer skies, and others left bare, their imperfections singing louder than polish ever could. Beneath them, the marigolds bloom bright and low, mirroring the hues above. It's not a designer display, but a celebration of imperfection, and that makes it deeply inviting. Just a few feet away, a second view unfolds, rows of vegetables standing proud between handmade windflowers. These lids, fixed upright on slender rods, have been lovingly painted with bees, petals, strawberries, and swirls. They're not just decorations, they're kinetic sculptures with purpose. As the wind whispers through the garden, they turn, making soft clinks and gentle rustles, a music only small gardens know. You can hear bees join in, lured by the calendula and chard, and may be curious about the hand-painted blooms nearby. In a quieter corner, a rusted metal trellis bears lids bent like pinwheels, some left raw and others painted in soft, chipped whites and peachy tones. The plants beneath, thyme and lavender, fill the air with scent. A watering can sits by the bricks, half full, as if someone just stepped away for a moment and will return to watch the wind play its tricks. These wind spinners ask for little, just a drill, some twine or wire, and a willingness to turn scrap into joy. You don't need perfection. You need patience, a bit of color, and a space that welcomes the breeze. Let the wind do the work. Let your hands guide the shape. And let your garden be a gallery of second chances. There's a certain kind of honesty in salvaged metal, in things that were once cast aside, left to rust in silence. But here, in the quiet corner of a compact backyard, those forgotten exhaust pipes now stand tall and proud, forming a hand-built fence that hums with resilience. Each pipe, once part of a journey down highways and narrow alleys, is repurposed, sunk deep into the soil like industrial reeds in a modern garden swamp. Some pipes are raw and rust-kissed, others still bear the dark smudges of carbon soot, their curves narrating years of engine growl and movement. They aren't uniform. They weren't meant to be. That's what makes them beautiful. Their weathered bodies now cradle delicate vines of clematis and trailing nasturtiums, green lace that winds through the metal like nature reclaiming its rhythm. Beneath the sculpture, spinach and parsley flourish in soft raised beds, tended by hand. Nearby, a wooden crate leans with the tools of the day. Nothing fancy, just the basics. A trowel, a spade, maybe a scribbled seed packet tucked into the corner. Afternoon sun dapples through the gaps, highlighting the metallic sheen and casting shadows that stretch like striped whispers across the soil. This is not just fencing. It's a song of contrast, between hard metal and soft bloom, between machine and earth. A reminder that what we discard may yet return with a different purpose, a quieter grace. It starts with a wall, bare, forgotten, and gray. But with a little imagination and a drawer full of discarded electronics, it transforms into something that stirs the senses. A vertical tapestry of old motherboards, tangled circuits, and pixel green panels now shines against a garden fence. Each board, with its maze of copper traces and microchips, once lived in a humming machine. Now they live outdoors. Screwed onto mesh grids or wooden boards, they reflect light like stained glass for the digital age. Between them, a garden quietly grows, rosemary, lettuce, nasturtiums, breathing life beneath what once was pure code. In one yard, the panels stretch like pixel art across the fence. Blue, brown, and green rectangles form a grid as orderly as any quilt. Below, a recycled drawer bursts with violet blooms, and a green watering can waits for use, as if nature and circuit speak in tandem. Elsewhere, the boards are arranged with wild abandon. Some cracked, others connected by lengths of old wire, forming a trellis of forgotten technology. A child's toy tractor rests nearby, as garden gloves hang lazily on one side, a reminder that this is not a gallery. It's a working space, a living patch of earth with walls made from what most would toss. There is quiet brilliance in this chaos. It's not just recycling, it's storytelling through solder and soil. There's something poetic in the way rust meets bloom. In this garden, nestled between gravel paths and rows of sun-kissed marigolds, old bike gears and chains have found a new rhythm. They no longer spin wheels down alleys or coast through forgotten towns. Instead, they trace the edges of life, outlining beds of lettuce, chard, lavender, and peppers with an industrial sort of grace. From a distance, it might seem sculptural, even accidental, but lean closer and you'll notice each piece has been placed with intention. The gears, large and small, are half buried in soil like iron flowers mid-bloom, while the chains snake between them in wave-like curves, mimicking the garden's own quiet undulations. Some are pocked with rust, others glint faintly in the late light, but all wear their history with quiet dignity. This isn't polished. It's not the kind of garden you find in catalogs or curated estates. It's real, footprints in gravel, a watering can left askew, sunflowers tilting at the edge of frame. The kind of space shaped slowly, by hand and heart, where function meets whimsy, and what once sped through streets now guards tomatoes and lavender like loyal sentinels. If you've got old chains lying in the shed, or forgotten gears left from a broken bike, let them speak. Shape them into a story. You don't need perfect tools, just patience and a bit of wire. Set them into soil, weave the curves, and watch as the metal frames the wild, holding back nothing but chaos, and letting nature grow bold and free. In this garden, beauty doesn't bloom despite the rust. It blooms because of it. Some doors no longer need to open to hold meaning. In these tiny garden corners, forgotten farmhouse entries and salvaged church panels find new life, not as barriers, but as storytellers. One door stands alone at the end of a backyard fence, its faded green-blue paint gently peeling like old bark. The brass hardware still clings to its frame, quietly catching afternoon light. In place of a window pane, a narrow mirror now reflects soft herbs and summer blossoms below, rosemary, petunias, and a cluster of strawberries gathered in a worn wooden crate. It's peaceful here, the kind of place where sunlight doesn't rush and even the shadows seem to take their time. Not far away, another garden hides an arched antique door, likely once from a church or schoolhouse. Its pointed top, painted in faded teal, rises like a fairy tale gate in the middle of a quiet gravel path. Though the hinges no longer move, its presence breathes charm into the entire alleyway. A climbing rose wraps itself lovingly around one side, pink blossoms nodding toward visitors. Nearby, a watering can rest beside stacked terracotta pots, waiting patiently like quiet sentinels of the garden's rhythm. And then there are two, a pair of doors leaning side by side like old friends. Each carries years of weathered stories, flaked white paint, rusted keyholes, and stubborn doorknobs. They've been arranged not to function, but to frame life. Hanging pots sway gently from their crossbeams. Lavender spills from metal buckets and recycled crates, while tiny lights overhead add a soft evening glow. Behind them, ivy climbs without permission, as if drawn toward these forgotten frames that once led somewhere, now leading to nothing but beauty. These aren't just decorative props. They are gestures of nostalgia and ingenuity. Anyone with a bit of patience and an eye for salvage can create something similar. One door, one fence line, one small patch of backyard transformed into a whimsical corner of the world. You don't need a plan. Just an old door, a few flowers, and the belief that magic still lives in things we've let go. As dusk falls, the garden begins to hum in a different way, less birdsong, more quiet amber glows. And here, creativity speaks softly through light and shape. On one small patio, forgotten speaker boxes have found new purpose. Hung neatly against a dark-stained fence, they now cradle warm LED bulbs, their original speaker mesh casting dappled shadows. Below, metal cans cradle mint and oregano, their rusted edges catching just enough light to shine. There's nothing showy here. It's honest and calming, the kind of DIY that invites a pause, not a performance. Nearby, another wall glows with whimsical circles, once portable speakers, now repainted and repurposed. Rust red, deep green, slate gray. They dangle gently from a wooden lattice, holding flickering tea lights like little garden moons. Beneath them, succulents crowd in cozy pots, and a chipped mug waits on a table for its next tea break. You can almost hear the clink of tools, the soft scrape of soil. This is gardening at human scale, personal, imperfect, entirely yours. And then there's the hammock corner. 3 vintage bookshelf speakers have become glowing lanterns, each lit with a golden Edison bulb. Nestled in the crook of reclaimed wood and climbing clematis, they glow like campfire embers. The wires are tucked away, the bulbs exposed, the light warm enough to soothe a long day. Foxgloves sway gently nearby. Nothing is curated. It simply is. The magic of the space doesn't come from design. It comes from intention. You reused what others tossed out, and in doing so, made a place worth coming home to. There's something unexpectedly delightful about stumbling upon a wall of old remote controls. Not inside a dusty drawer, but in the open air, surrounded by soil, blooms, and birdsong. Here, in a series of tiny gardens across the world, the remnants of electronic convenience are reborn as playful, poetic installations. In one whimsical backyard, a reclaimed wooden board is covered in a neat grid of remote controls. Some are pristine, others half-melted or worn to the plastic bone, each screwed in place like forgotten relics of living rooms past. They're organized like a bizarre control panel, black ones grouped with black, white with white, shapes forming a quiet symmetry. A lone remote in the center bears a handwritten label, Rain Control. It's absurd, and yet, standing in front of it, with creeping time curling at your feet and purple pansies swaying gently in the wind, it doesn't feel like a joke, it feels like a wish. A small, earnest request to the sky. Further south, in a compact New Zealand yard, the concept takes on a cleaner, more industrial form. Dozens of remotes are mounted within a steel mesh grid, painted in cool monochrome hues, blacks, grays, silvers, like an abstract art mural disguised as a tech graveyard. As dusk settles, tiny LEDs fitted inside some of the remotes begin to blink softly, mimicking stars in a synthetic sky. Below, lettuce grows from recycled bins, and orange marigolds frame the base like living pixels. This is no longer trash. This is a scene that invites both wonder and replication. And in a narrow garden wall in the UK, a third vision unfolds, louder, funnier, and thoroughly charming. Remote controls, light switches, thermostats, even pieces of old keyboards are arranged across a rusted metal plate. Each button has been renamed Bee Summon, Sunlight Plus 10, Bloom Mode. It's pure fantasy, yet grounded in tactile reality. Ivy winds around the edges. A bench made of pallet wood waits quietly below, the perfect perch for daydreams or a good laugh. The weathered bricks behind it whisper of time and decay, but the message is clear. This is a space made with love, creativity, and no budget at all. So much of what we throw away could be something more. A story, a spark, a structure. And in these gardens, the old tools of command have found new purpose, not to change the channel, but to change how we see the world. In a forgotten drawer, old USB cables once had a purpose. Now, they've become vines in a living sculpture. Along a wooden fence in a modest backyard, cords in black and gray twist like living tendrils, curling around mesh panels. Some dangle loosely, others spiral in graceful loops. And from this techno-organic chaos, real sweet peas and jasmine burst through, soft green leaves brushing against plastic loops. There is no perfection here, only honesty and beauty in the blend. Elsewhere in an urban nook, a more structured divider rises. The grid is clean, geometric. But within it, the cables loop wildly, forming coiled blossoms and strange nodes. Among the wires, fig vines and passion flowers stretch upward, insisting on life amid static. It feels like nature reclaiming the machine, or perhaps a truce between them. The shadows are soft and sincere, cast by the waning light of a long day. And in a quiet corner, someone painted cables to match the trees. Forest green and bark brown tangle with dry seed pods and twinkle lights, forming an unlikely vine over old wood. Below, pots of geraniums and thyme anchor the piece with scent and color. You can almost smell the earth and copper. Nothing here tries too hard, yet everything is alive with story, a DIY project stitched from memory, play, and simple things that never needed to be thrown away.